Hello and welcome. I'm Saad Dino, pharmacist and co-owner of Acton Pharmacy, West Concord Pharmacy, and Keys Drug in Newton. I would like to welcome everyone back to our show, A Healthier You. Our goal is to discuss current health topics and to provide information that would guide you to a healthier life. Today, we will be discussing pet health with Dr. Heather Gould and Dr. Carol Lee Manley, both associate veterinarians at Apple Country Animal Hospital in Stowe. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate taking the time to discuss animal health with us today. Animals are part of our family, and we want to take care of them as best possible. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourselves and your practice, if you don't mind?
I'm Dr. Carol Lee Manley. I am one of 3 veterinarians at Apple Country Animal Hospital in Stowe. We are a 3-doctor practice. We mostly just do dogs and cats. We do routine surgeries, dentals. We do a lot of medical workups. And this is my associate, Dr. Heather Gould. We both are graduates of Tufts. We actually graduated together, so we've known each other for a while now.
And I think that partnership helps us to develop better medicine for our clients, because we're comfortable with each other, we trust each other, and when we have difficult cases, we can go back to each other and kind of pick our brains to be able to give the best care to our pets.
So now we're into the summertime, summer period, and we have to look after our pets and ensure that especially with the heat and such, that they're taken care of to the best of our ability. So what recommendations do you have for your pet owners during the summer period, and what extra things that we should be doing for our pets especially during the summertime?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the more important things is when it starts getting warm out, and probably before you even think it's warm enough out, the fleas and ticks do come out. And they can carry a lot of diseases that can be transmitted to your pet. So having them on a flea and tick preventative, at least when it starts getting warmer, if not year-round, is very beneficial. Also really important for these really hot days that we're getting is, and I know we hear a lot about it on the news, is don't leave your pet in a hot car, especially with the windows up. It gets hot so quickly. And in correlation with that, pavement can get really hot in the sun, and so try to walk your pets in the morning or in the evening. Yeah, because they can get burns on their pads. And the other thing is wildlife starts to become more prevalent when it gets warm out. And we do have rabies in the state of Massachusetts, as well as other diseases that can be transmitted. So it is really important to have your pets up to date on their vaccines and hopefully prevent them from getting some of those diseases.
In regards to wildlife, what is the most what's our pets? I have a small dog as well. I have a little Bichon, so we're always nervous about coyotes or such. Is that what you're referring to?
Coyotes, bats that get in the house. Very often in the warmer months, we see a lot of bats that can enter into homes, and so this is even with our indoor cats. A lot of people ask why you need to vaccinate your indoor cat, and it's because things can come in the house that don't normally be there, such as bats that can expose people and animals. And sometimes animals can escape. Raccoons, fisher cats, they're all a problem. And any animal that comes in contact with a wild animal, you're going to presume the wild animal has some kind of a disease, so you definitely want to keep your animal safe. Vaccination's key.
Absolutely.
And how about hydration? We speak as humans. We drink extra water, drink extra water. I assume it's the same thing for
and even
pets.
In the summer we also have to be careful. Lots of us like to leave our dogs outside for a number of hours. Just they prefer it than being inside. But you have to remember when it's 90 degrees, if they don't have shelter or place to go, they can get hot very, very quickly. So you do have to be really careful. Make sure they have water and make sure they have a cool place to go.
Especially those dogs or that are very furry. I'm sure that's another added coat of.
Yeah, and our elderly pets, they can't dissipate heat the same way our younger ones can. So, years ago your dog may have handled the heat, but now they may not. So you have to be very careful. Heat stroke's a big problem for animals. Okay. They can't sweat the same way we do. All they can do is pant.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And also those pets that kind of have your smushed in faces. So your pugs, and their respiratory system or their airways are already compromised, so it doesn't take much for them to overheat and start to have some real issues. So, yeah.
Speaking of ticks, you both hit on it a little bit, but what schedule would you recommend for whether it's the collar or other aspects that you could even get into. I know there's new things that they utilize now for tick prevention. So if you don't mind hitting on that point a little bit, that'll be great.
Flea and tick prevention is critical. Sometimes year-round, fleas can be in your house year-round, so we do recommend people use it year-round if possible. The best flea and tick prevention is the one that works for each individual. So there's collars out now that can last up to 8 months, and that's been great for some of our clients who forget to put on their preventative. These dogs can swim with it, they never take it off, and so compliance-wise, we've been seeing great success because people don't have to remember to do it.
Okay.
There are some flea and tick prevention that works great on dogs, but may be toxic to cats, so you really have to look at your label to make sure that what you're using will be okay to be in your house and exposed to other animals as well.
Got it.
Most flea and tick prevention, there are topicals that are put on once a month, and those you just have to be careful after you put it on because you don't want to be in contact with the chemicals for you and your family, but they do work great for our dogs and cats. There are new ones out now that are oral, and so a lot of people with young kids are preferring to use that, so there's no exposure to chemicals at all.
Okay.
So there's a lot out there. It doesn't necessarily matter what you do as long as you do it and you're vigilant with it. We know that what the flea and ticks carry are nasty diseases, and people are always worried about the chemicals, but we also have to be worried about what we're trying to protect our animals from. There are some natural remedies out there as well. I don't have as much great success with them as the pretty mainline topicals, but some of our clients are dabbling with using those as well. They have to be natural ones have to be put on daily, which is much harder for people to remember to do.
Okay, they do. How about, from a clinical perspective, I'm sure the 8 months ones have been proven to work.
Yes, they work great.
They do.
Yeah.
And I know they probably cost a little more, but probably more cost effective.
They don't cost more.
They don't, okay.
It's actually the collar that we use is a controlled release version of some of the topicals. So it makes contact with the skin, but it keeps a steady state within the skin, so that way when the flea or tick should bite, there's the medication that they're ingesting.
Okay.
Cost-wise, it actually is cheaper than some of the topicals when you're talking about 8 months of protection.
Interesting. No, I think you both hit on this a little earlier in our discussion, is that I have a question because I think somebody asked me that question one time at the pharmacy. Can an animal get sunburn? And or heat stroke?
Yeah, they can get both. Your pets that are more susceptible to sunburns are kind of your white dogs, or your dogs that don't have a lot of hair on their nose, which is a common place to get sunburn on the tips of their ears. And you can use sunscreen on your pets. Yeah, the best one to use is usually your spray sunscreen for babies or kids, because it sprays on clear and it dries on contact, so then you don't have to worry about them licking it off like your ointments.
Sure.
And then heat stroke, like we touched upon earlier, is definitely something that is concerning on these hot days. So really don't exercise your dog in the middle of the day. If you like to run with your dog, do it in the morning or do it later. And again, watch out for that hot pavement because that's going to affect it. And if you're noticing that your dog is acting weak or stumbling, or having any vomiting or diarrhea, you definitely want to bring them into the shade, maybe a cool hose, make sure it's not hot water coming out of that hose, or wet towels on them to try to help cool them down, and then obviously seek veterinary care. So.
And I'm sure that, with hydration, it's the same thing. If the dog is, or the other pet is
always access to water.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Now, so we hit on the summertime. The summertime also brings, or springtime, summertime brings allergies, for humans. Now, I know my dog suffers from, allergies. So what can we do to prevent or help our dogs from itching and going at their paws and all that good stuff?
So itchy dogs is a big thing that we see this time of year, almost all year too, because even dogs can have food allergies, and food allergies can present as itchy skin as well. Those dogs would be itchy year-round if they have a food allergy, but this time of year we do see allergies in dogs. Dogs can be allergic to the same thing people can be allergic to, so ragweeds, pollens, grasses, and that can be seasonally, just the same way it is for us. Allergies presents a little differently in dogs than it does in people. People can be sneezing, watery eyes, and we can see watery eyes with some dogs, but usually we're going to see itchy skin for these dogs. They can be scooting, they can be licking their paws a lot, so if your dog just licks their paws, that can be a sign of allergies. It can be so bad that they can have lesions all over their entire body, losing their fur. and just be miserable. So we can do things as simple as giving them baths that washes the allergens off of their skin.
Okay.
There are some shampoos that are made for dogs that are meant to help with the itch as well. That really helps if you think for people, we take showers and we wash allergens off as well, and dogs don't always get a chance to do that. You can give antihistamines to the dogs the same way we can in people. Ask your veterinarian about the dose so that we would recommend. And there are some newer drugs out these days that really help dogs with allergies. It used to be years ago that steroids were a mainstay, and they still are, but there are some newer drugs out that allow us to not use steroids as a first line to help with your itchy dog. And so a lot of our dogs are seeing great relief from these meds. Okay. So if you do have an itchy dog, I would highly recommend you get to a vet because we can give them a lot of relief.
So do cats have the same issues, or is it less to a lesser degree?
Less.
Well, cats aren't outdoors as much either as dogs, so they're not quite as exposed. Cats have allergies. Fleas, a lot of times they can get a flea allergic dermatitis. Okay. But they're funny little creatures, and they can develop allergy to things for no reason at all, or they can have their own body have allergic type symptoms without an allergen even around. So cats don't have allergies the same way that dogs do, and we don't treat them necessarily the same way we would in a dog.
And are there breeds of dogs that are more susceptible to allergies than others, or is it just kind of equal across the board?
Yeah, I would say, and we probably see more labs and golden retrievers that have allergies, and it's a question of, we just see a lot of them. So, numbers wise, Wheatons, kind of your small white fluffy dogs tend to tend to have allergies. So pit bulls tend to have a lot of allergies as well. Yeah. Okay. So those are probably the more common ones we see.
So, speaking of medication, so, I think one of the hardest complaints, or one of the most complaints that we get about from pet owners is my dog or my cat or my ferret or I can't give them the medicine. Yeah. So do you have any suggestions that, that our viewers could utilize in giving, medications to the loved pets? And
we usually separate dogs and cats in this group because dogs are usually a lot easier to medicate than cats. So for some dogs, you can just put it on peanut butter, put a little bit of chicken, and they'll eat it right up, or you can even just put it in their food. There are some meds out made by some of our manufacturers that are chewable, which many of our dogs like.
Sure.
So that helps with the dogs. A lot of the medications are flavored in beef, and it's just easy to do. Cats, not so much. Cats, if they don't like it, they're not going to eat it, and they're much pickier. So usually with the cats, we have to get much more creative on how to feed them. Sometimes you can crush up the medication and put in the food. You just have to make sure it's a medication that can be crushed up before you do that. But lately, there's a lot more compounding available for dogs and cats. And that's really helped. You can compound into a flavored liquid. Not that the cats will like the liquid, but sometimes it's just easier to give a cat a liquid. You can compound into a flavored treat. The thing with a treat is with a cat, they just have to eat it, and so not all cats will eat a flavored treat either. You can compound it into a transdermal gel that you can rub on the ear, and that's been a real favorite for a lot of our clients. Okay. Sometimes the absorption is questionable, so not all drugs can be compounded this way, but when they can be, it's been a lifesaver for our clients. You just have to be careful around young kids when you compound any kind of a transdermal med, because anything that gets absorbed into our skin can get absorbed into their skin, and so it's not really ideal for a family with young children.
And compounding is just the art of mixing it together into a nice suspension or gel or transdermal, and I'm glad that it has helped many of your clients over the years. It is very hard to I've tried to as a pharmacist tried to give my little guy medicine, and sometimes it's impossible. So thanks so much for those tips. How about nutrition? Nutrition is important for our little guys and our pets, or not just necessarily little guys, but pets in general. And what do you guys recommend for your clients when it comes to nutrition? Yeah,
I think there's a lot of really good foods out there, and I know it can be overwhelming with the number of foods out there. And I think you can get a good quality food at your grocery store, at your pet food store, at your vet with a prescription diet. The biggest thing with pet food is you just want to make sure that it has been AAFCO tested, which is kind of the regulating group that makes sure that they have the appropriate amount of minerals and nutrients and vitamins. and that it's specifically for your pet's life stage. So what you feed your adult dog isn't necessarily what you would feed your growing puppy or your dog that you're thinking of breeding, or your really active dog. There are different foods formulated based on their lifestyle. So as long as it has been tested by AAFCO and that it's appropriate for your life stage, I think it's a good food if your dog likes it.
And the AAFCO statement will be on the back.
Yeah,
of your
it'll
bag
be on
of
the
food.
label.
It's AAFCO.
AAFCO, AAFCO.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then a lot of people, we've had people come in that have been interested in doing home cooked diets.
Sure.
I think you have to be a little careful with that because it's hard to get everything that you need in the right amounts. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of really good literature that I think you need to do your research on, as well as consult with your veterinarian just to make sure that your dog's getting everything that it needs. So, yeah.
And organic versus, does that, some people are big on organic stuff. And
I always tell people, you don't want to go broke feeding your dog. You want to make sure that you save enough money to be able to care for them when you need to, or if they get sick. So I think that you can find a balanced diet at the supermarket as well as you can at any pet store.
Okay.
It's probably the same for you. If you shop at Whole Foods because you believe in organic, or you want to shop at another market and not get organic food, I think you can get a balanced diet at either place. It's just what's important to you.
Got it. And obviously the food also not just based on the lifespan of the animal, depending on years, but also weight.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So some of them are weight related.
Absolutely. We do see a tendency for dogs that have a few more pounds and cats that have a few more pounds than they should, and that can lead to health problems down the road, like diabetes, stress on their joints, stress on their heart. So, you do need to feed them an appropriate amount, as well as maybe minimize or regulate how many treats you give them. But at some point, it can be too little that you're feeding them, so then you have to adjust to a different diet because you don't want your pet to be starving all the time, and you also want to make sure they're getting an appropriate amount of nutrients that they need.
So feeding, obviously depending on the size of the dog or the type, twice a day, 3 times a day, or do you recommend
I like
splitting?
twice a day.
Twice a day. Okay.
I don't think it matters
Yeah.
necessarily. It's the total amount they're given in a day, and you have to consider, these animals in the wild, they get meals whenever they can, and so, as long as what you're feeding is the appropriate amount, whether you divide it into twice a day, 3 times a day, or once a day, I don't necessarily think it makes a difference. Most people like to do twice a day because it goes along with more of how they eat.
Okay.
So that way, when they're eating, their animals are eating. But I don't think it necessarily makes a big deal. There are some animals that just have voracious appetites, and for those animals, they really do need to eat twice a day because they need to feel like you're giving them food, and you need to feel like you're giving them food. As people, we tend to love our animals with food, and that can cause a lot of problems. And so sometimes being able to feed them twice a day eliminates the use of treats or excessive amounts of food that they would otherwise be giving.
Now, Dr. Miller, you hit on diabetes.
Yeah.
Is that are dogs more prone to diabetes, or cats are more prone to diabetes?
We actually see more cats, but we do see a fair number of dogs as well. Cats typically tend to regulate a little bit better, but you have more of an indoor sedentary animal with a cat, which is important to try to play with them and keep them active.
Yep.
And so we see them being overweight quite a bit, which can then lead to that problem.
Diabetes in cats and dogs is a little different
It is
too.
different.
The kind of cat diabetes that cats get is more of the insulin-resistant diabetes. It's the type that overweight people can get, as along with overweight cats. So being overweight for a cat, it makes them really prone to diabetes. Dogs don't necessarily get that kind of diabetes. They get more of the juvenile type diabetes, which is not necessarily related to weight at all. So the way you go about it can be a little different, and the outlook on the animal can be different based on which type of diabetes they have. So weight loss in a cat's going to be pretty key.
And it doesn't matter on the breed? Are the more breeds more susceptible to diabetes, or it doesn't matter?
I don't see too many.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And there have been cases where if you can get the weight off of your cat, we have lots of cats that go into remission and don't need to have insulin injections for the rest of their life. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Obviously these four-legged animals, for the most part, are walking on on the grounds, on the floors, outside, as we hit on earlier. Sometimes we may not, as owners, we may not notice they might have gone onto something that, their paws might have gotten something that is either poisonous or
Yeah.
dangerous or such. What are signs that, because obviously they like to lick their paws.
Yeah.
So what kind of signs should we be looking out, in the sense if something got ingested or they got on their paws on something that's, very dangerous in the sense of a poisonous fertilizer or whatever it may be. What should we be looking out for signs of and symptoms of poison? And also, when should they come and see you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's important that if you know what it is that they potentially came into contact with, is to call either Pet Poison Control or the ASPCA to know how damaging that can be to your pet, because it really is time sensitive with a lot of these things. If we can kind of get it out of them, the sooner the better.
Sure.
Once it's in their system and it's being metabolized, it's a lot, then you're just treating the symptoms that it causes. So really just the first thing is to try to figure out what it is, call your vet, call one of the poison control numbers. If you don't know, or if it potentially was hours ago or an unknown period of time, it's really important to monitor for any type of neurologic issues, so stumbling,
Yep.
weakness, salivating, so they're just drooling excessively,
Okay.
vomiting and diarrhea can all be indicators that they came into contact with something, and then obviously contact your veterinarian as soon as possible.
It seems like the rat, poison.
Yeah,
That, a lot
scary.
of a lot of animals are getting into, and that's where
Yeah.
we sometimes get calls at the pharmacy,
Yeah.
and we say, please call your vet right away.
Yeah, you really, I mean, if it can be within a couple of hours, really, if we can get them to get rid of that out of their system, it really can be helpful down the road.
So, what are the common health issues that you guys see in your practice this time of year when it comes to animal health? What is I'm sure you guys are doing wellness checks and stuff, but what are owners bringing their animals in for the most part this time of year?
Vomiting, diarrhea. Dogs and cats eat things that they shouldn't, and so that can run amok with their GI tract. Intestinal parasites can be a problem. The more people or animals go outside,
Okay.
the more we tend to see the intestinal parasites.
A lot of allergies this time of year.
Also, okay.
A lot of tick-borne diseases this time of year. So you just have your very achy pet that doesn't. And honestly, they've studied it more in dogs than they have in cats, and so we see it a lot more in dogs. They haven't really proven that it has the same effect in cats.
Okay.
But just your dog is off. It doesn't greet you at the door. It doesn't move around very well. We see a lot of wounds this time of year. Because either cats are out feeling good and wanting to fight with either another cat or wildlife. So
Okay.
a lot of wounds, yeah.
And I'm sure they get into the woods and they might get a scrape on their skin and such, and that sometimes will cause abscess. And it has happened to my dog.
Yeah, and any wound that we don't know what the cause was, we have to treat it as though it potentially came into contact with a rabid animal, because the risk is so severe to people. So
Wow. Okay.
your pet comes in with just a scratch and we don't know where it came from, we're gonna treat it as though it potentially came into contact with a rabid animal. So just to be
good
on
to
the
know.
safe side.
And what that
That's-
means is that the state dictates what we do when
Okay.
you have an animal that came in contact with a potential rabid animal or a wound of unknown origin, and that usually means that they're quarantined. And quarantine means in your home,
Yeah.
but for a lot of cats that like to go outside, it can be a nightmare to some of our owners. So definitely keeping your pet safe is pretty important, because once they're quarantined, we have a lot of angry
And up to
angry
date on
cats and angry
rabies.
owners. Yeah.
Yeah.
I assume just like humans, our pets need a wellness check once in a while.
Yeah.
What do you guys recommend?
We recommend it, for most animals, you recommend it yearly. As animals become seniors, you recommend it every 6 months. There's a lot that can be missed in animals on a day-to-day basis that we don't notice in our own pets, such as weight loss, that can be picked up at a wellness exam. Animals can't convey to us that they're not feeling well, or if they feel a little bit off, very often it goes missed. So at annual exams, we can pick up a lot of the little things that you wouldn't ordinarily notice in your pets: dental disease, broken teeth, infection. Sometimes you can notice, even sometimes cancers we can find. Hyperthyroidism, kidney disease. There's a lot that we can pick up at your routine appointment that we think is pretty important. Other things is just education as well. So there's a lot about owning a pet that you need to know in terms of vaccines, meds that you should be on, ways to keep your pet safe. And so coming in once a year really helps educate the owner and make sure that the animals are in good health and protected.
Thank you so much. My last question is that, obviously, we know our pets are not humans. We know that, and they can't tell us, when they're not feeling sick or ill. What are signs and symptoms that we should just let our viewers know, just so they know that, hey, it's time to go to the vet because something's going on? And you hit on it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you could just expand, that'll be great.
I mean, weight loss is a big one. Sometimes it's really hard to notice in your own pet because it's so subtle. But I always say if a pet feels well, they usually will eat. And so if your pet's not eating, I think it's a big red flag that something's going on. So if your pet doesn't eat for a day, potentially you can sit on it. But if it's going on 2, 3, I definitely would get your animal to a vet. Other things are going to be, are they drinking a lot of water, or are they urinating more frequently? Are they vomiting? Are they having diarrhea? Little things like that. Are they itchy? Are you noticing, weird hair loss on your pet that you weren't noticing before? Are you noticing odors of your pet? Are they, having bad breath, or are their ears having more debris than they would normally have? Those are all things that we would recommend that you come in for. Limping is another one. Are they having pain? Are they acting not themselves? So
How is Lyme disease prevalent in animals?
It's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Animals, they are sentinels to what's in the area, and so when an animal comes in with Lyme disease, well, we know then the ticks in the area are carrying Lyme disease. When they come in with anaplasma, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, we know they're telling us that the ticks in our area are carrying all these diseases. So what our animals can get, very often we can get, but in this area in particular, tick-borne disease is huge. We are a big area for Lyme. So if we can use the flea and tick prevention and kill the tick before it's able to transmit disease, it's critical. But also if your animal is showing signs like they may have a tick-borne disease, if they have a fever, they're lethargic, they're lame, not walking right, I think you need to get to a vet because it very well could be a tick-borne disease.
Thank you again for joining us. Our pets are members of the family, so their health is important too, which is why we are so pleased Dr. Gould and Dr. Manley were able to educate us about pet health today. Thank you again, Dr. Gould and Dr. Manley, for taking the time to speak with us, and thank you all for tuning in to A Healthier You. For health-related topics and more information, you could find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Acton Pharmacy. I'm Saad Dino, co-owner of Acton Pharmacy, West Concord Pharmacy, and Keys Drug, and look forward to seeing you around town. Thank you so much for joining us.